After years of trial and error and sucking at it, I'm happy to tell you that I still suck, but I have finally completed the rare full Paul Desmond setup as he played it. Alongside with trying the latest mouthpiece options that market themselves on the Desmond sound, I can finally make a solid definitive overview of what to look for if you want that same gorgeous type of silk sound like Desmond used to have. This type of sound never came naturally to me. I've always loved fusion jazz as well, with Eric Marienthal and Michael Brecker as key inspirations, but I would love to turn someday to the dark side. So here's my final overview of a 4-year journey, including a final mouthpiece meta review that took some unexpected turns. Buckle up, because this is the final sound out. Like any good story, it all started with mouthpieces. In the good old days of a proper 2021 COVID lockdown, I was writing in my Desmond method book, and while researching for the section sound, I landed on a page by famous mouthpiece maker Theo Wanne on the Desmond mouthpiece, which is an MC Gregory A4 M18. That's quite a mouthful. What you have to know right away is that this mouthpiece maker, MC Gregory, is long out of business since 1970. So I sent an email to Theo to ask if he had any mouthpieces to match that Desmond sound, but he was super honest in saying he didn't. Somehow in that exchange he sent me anyways spontaneously 4 strains of his alto mouthpieces to review, which were all on the brighter side. And meanwhile, for the Desmond sound, I went to the next mouthpiece maker that came to mind to ask exactly the same thing. Jody Espina from JodyJazz had right at that time his new HR custom dark mouthpiece, and he suggested a small tip opening like a 4 or 5 with a heavy reed to acquire a type of Paul Desmond sound. In a controlled environment and by copying a Desmond solo, I could fairly match the sound, and at the time it was the best fitting mouthpiece I had, which wasn't too hard as I owned strictly bright or bebop mouthpieces. Then it occurred to me that the 3D printing company Syos might actually be able to replicate a MC Gregory mouthpiece like Desmond, giving the dimensions and workings as portrayed on Theo Wanne's website. How cool would that be if I could play the original but then 3D printed? It was certainly the closest I could come to experience what Desmond felt when playing, I thought. Pauline Ivano from Syos was so kind to send me this MC Gregory model Desmond used as a replica, and she added as well a custom-made mouthpiece in a Desmond style integrated with today's standards. Read loudness. It was a custom-made model, which is very similar to their current model, the Smokey. Okay, the story is not done yet, but let me give you a very short review of these dark mouthpieces just mentioned and tried. I should also mention that in these earlier tries of these mouthpieces you hear now, I played my beloved late Mark VI. It's a late Mark VI, which sounds brighter than the super balanced action Desmond played. Let's review it through that lens. On the JodyJazz HR Custom Dark. Quality mouthpiece, really. Genuinely dark, but the problem is I don't think anymore Paul Desmond's sound should be described as dark. More on that later. Honestly, this one feels like it's more in the ballpark with Jackie McLean's sound. Dark, but still a lot of projection at the same time. For Syos, first about that replica, I had the feeling at that first time of testing it already, but certainly since acquiring an original MC Gregory, I'm sure of it, nah, not remotely similar. One of the least quality mouthpieces I've tried, to be honest. But on the other side, that quasi-smoky thing definitely had a nice vintage feel to it. I recorded my Charlie Parker solo arrangement on Cherokee with it, and I'm still happy with that result. It has like a slight vintage filter with still quite some projection to it. Not really Desmond, although it worked fine, but I feel like playing Grover Washington Jr. would be a nice fit, or anything smooth jazz. All these mouthpieces I played were generally quality, except for that MC Gregory Syos replica, but it didn't fully click to play Desmond either. And then I saw this new mouthpiece that came out by Morgan named the Dry Martini. It was Eric Greifenhagen who created that mouthpiece, and he does an excellent impression of the Desmond sound himself. I heard that and I got in contact with him, and I'm still very grateful that they sent me a Dry Martini 418 model. They came in the tip opening 4, 5 and 6, and although I wanted to go for the opening Desmond originally used, as I really wanted to experience as close to what Paul Desmond would have experienced, that would be the 4 tip opening, I felt too insecure at the time to make that big of a jump coming from generally a 7 to 8 range in tip openings, and so I made a compromise and went for the 5. This was my first testing round sound matching on what I still think is the most beautiful quasi-compositional improvisation Desmond recorded on in your own sweet way. It really felt great playing that, as much so that I found it acceptable enough to start a Desmond tribute band, the Desmond Legacy. I started doing these living room sessions and immediately felt the difference in getting closer to Desmond's sound by how loud the music was played and what the arrangement was. Consider this take on the first session. I liked the take, but because it was rather hectic and played in a hotter way than the original, it's really hard to play cool jazz when you come from like the general jazz education. The sound is more intense. The session after that we played way more with the original intent and arrangement of A Taste of Honey, also much softer already, and this was a moment that really clicked for me the first time. Still playing a Mark 6 here, but this was literally the session that made me want to inquire to venues if we could play live with the band. We also did that really great arrangement of Paul Simon's America as recorded by Paul Desmond, which is one of the recordings I'm most proud of because everything came together. It's an incredible arrangement. I felt in the driver's seat in terms of control of the sound. The guys played it so musically and my improvisation was not that special or impressive, but yet to my taste it kind of fits. It fits the story of the tune and the arrangement, which is of course way more important than trying to impress with your saxophone skills. Okay, by now you can guess I like the Morgan Dry Martini the most of all the previous mouthpieces we've reviewed so far. But there are still 3 key twists ahead. Now things started really working. I also needed the real deal in terms of the saxophone. Yes, I know playing saxophone can be a slippery slope for your wallet, and don't tell my wife. I love my Mark 6, but I wanted to try how it would sound with a proper Selmer super balanced action. So short story long, I tried a dozen of Selmer super balanced actions. Yes, really like about 12 or 13 in the amazing German shop near Krefeld, which has by far the largest vintage saxophone collection I've ever seen. If you're into that kind of stuff, definitely worth a visit wherever you live on this planet. So I liked one of the super balanced actions close to Desmond's presumable serial number, which has never been really confirmed, but I needed a big renovation at the same time as they don't have the time to renovate all these old vintage saxophones that come in. Luckily I have Daniel Damen MD, one of Belgium's finest waffles and saxophone repairmen. His incredible delicate quality craftsmanship helped this old bugger. You can see the saxophone getting uncrooked in this video. I'll put a link in the description. It's so nice and satisfying to see Daniel work on that and uncrook the body and stuff. It's like the ASMR for saxophones. Little after that I also got the Dry Martini mouthpiece, now in a 4-tip opening. Because I had played now for more than a year on that 5-tip opening, the switch to the 4 felt natural and it made it just even slightly better. The trade-off is basically a little less volume for more sweetness in return. Then in combination with that super balanced action, I felt confident enough to have a Paul Desmond solo arranged for a saxophone big band section by the amazing Elliot Deutsch, which features also Ron Carter on bass. not only because of the alto sound and having one of the most pioneering jazz bass players on that recording, I'm proud of that result, but the finishing touch definitely came from my good friend Mark mixing and mastering the project on all old and dusty analog stuff. Really nice. So I thought this was it. Super satisfied with the road, but then suddenly out of nowhere, the infamous, illustrious, mythical, rare to find MC Gregory Mouthpiece arrived right onto my doorstep. For an equally rare concert of our Desmond legacy band, I'm a very bad booker, we had Edmond coming over all the way from Texas. He brought his MC Gregory A4 M18, on which Desmond played most of his career, but also owned that 16M version of the Mouthpiece, which Desmond played as a youngster, and the Master model, which Desmond played for a few years at the end of his life. I tried all three of them, and that 16M and the Master model just felt awkward, to be honest. Really small, and like I'm back 7 years, starting playing saxophone for the first few months and on a Selmer C-Star. Something like that. That was the experience. But the 18M4A was like discovering something completely new. Edmund was so nice to let me try that for the remainder of his stay in Belgium for about a week, and when he left I tried a little bit harder to find a reasonably priced MC Gregory 18M4A. This time just by letting other saxophonists and Daniel know I found one. The circle is round. I recently recorded in trio with Rob and Andy some tunes, still very much searching as it's new, not in the least concerning intonation, but now let's get really back to some Mouthpiece reviewing and a last comparison. Morgan vs MC Gregor. Let's start with the Dry Martini by Morgan. What I think it does really great is that it gives you a shape and the blueprint of the cool school saxophone sound. Whether it's like a bright saxophone itself, like a Mark VI or anything later, or the super balanced action and the like. It doesn't try to bring out as many frequencies as possible, which I feel many contemporary mouthpieces aim for. It has some kind of automatic frequency filter built in. It's very even throughout the range, both in sound and in intonation. It has a gorgeous warm sound by giving the air a place in the totality of sound when playing soft, just like you can hear in Paul Desmond's playing. The maximum range of the volume is rather soft, which is actually a feature for the cool jazz sound and which can be a disadvantage in, for example, big band sections. But I presume that's also why they have some tip openings going to 5 and 6. That gives you generally a little bit more of volume. And the MC Gregory is way brighter than I would have ever expected. After like 5 seconds I was playing funk on it, but it's the most spot on of all mouthpieces I've tried. Before ever having played it, I thought it would have quite some resistance, which is generally the case with like darker sounding mouthpieces, but it couldn't be more the opposite. The feeling of playing it reminded me strangely enough of that Beacheler diamond inlay I once owned when I was like 18 or 19, like the one Gerald Albright plays. It has almost a bright edge to it, like a mid-upper register of frequency, but without the real high frequencies. Honestly, it's unlike any of the many contemporary mouthpieces I've played. In the months before having ever played that mouthpiece, my hypothesis of Desmond having a dark sound was already changing, and playing it finally, that MC Gregory model made that hypothesis even more true than I anticipated. To summarize, the premise of what I thought Paul Desmond's sound was quite flawed. If I would have to describe Paul Desmond's sound now, it would be a light roast, mid-range filtered coffee blend. Mellow because of the light high cutoff in the frequencies, and warm because of the breeze of air that is part of the sound. And also because he plays so effortless, really relaxed. About the most relaxed player I No, on alto saxophone. So where does that bring me in my conclusion on the Mouthpiece? The Dry Martini is still certainly the nicest Desmond mouthpiece currently available on the market to me. I'll mention that besides the Syos and the JodyJazz, I've also tried less extensively a Meyer 5, a Solstice and a Van Doren, of which I can't remember the full specific name to be honest, and a Selmer Soloist D. They all work to some degree and actually play nice, but that's also due to the fact that it's basically just a rubber or ebonite mouthpiece in a 4 or 5 tip opening range with a medium heart rate, and then you will come a long way. The Dry Martini is especially nice in evenness and control within all these mouthpieces, as well as the intonation and the depth. You'll get a bit darker sound perhaps than the original Desmond sound, which made me want to try it to a Lee Konitz arrangement of Mean to Me, and that worked pretty nice, I thought. But what is sure, that specific MC Gregory model is pretty special. And that doesn't take away that Desmond as well is very special, because I won't sound like him on it and you won't either. But it really does have some qualities that I didn't expect it to have. Altissimos, for example, are incredibly easy as well, by the way. It really feels like it's daring me to try fusion. Maybe let's try that later. But when played soft and controlled, it's the closest to Desmond without ever being able to reach that sound. Because you will never get there. Let's be honest, you can only sound like you. That's the only truth. However, that being said, taking a similar sound aesthetic to Desmond's is a path not taken by the majority of saxophone players. There is much undiscovered territory here, I feel like, which makes this journey taken certainly very worthwhile.